I've always been in sales my whole life, and I'm one of 10 children, so my parents entertained a lot, and I would sit around in the kitchen and listen to my father tell my mother about his workday. And I really think that was where I started first loving business. So I traded high-yield bonds and distressed bonds. I actually say that my career was very good training for raising money for the campaign because I've been taking rejection for 30 years. Chris and I met in college at the University of Delaware, and we were friends first. I was a freshman, he was a sophomore. He pulled me into student government. I really didn't have an interest in it. He talked me into it, I got involved. He eventually ran for president, and I ran as his secretary when he was a senior, and he won. And then the following year, I ran for president, and I won. I've been married 29 years, and the next president of the United States is my running mate, Christie.
So how are you managing to balance all this?
So it's not terribly difficult yet, and I left my job in April, my full-time job in New York City. So in some ways I actually have more time with my children. One of the biggest things that I kind of laid down the law on when I first became First Lady of New Jersey, when Chris became governor, I said, one day during the week you have to be home for family dinner. And our family dinner is a really important time for us to reconnect.
And are you able to live up to that, the one dinner a week?
We have for the last 6, almost 7 years now.
Everyone thinks I'm the politician in the family. We did a coin flip when we got married. I called tails, tails never fails, so I'm the guy who ran, but the politician just as good as me in the family is the woman that I met all those years ago at the University of Delaware.
There's been a lot of attention drawn to the fact that for most of your marriage, you've been the breadwinner.
Right.
So for people who are asking now, well, why resign from your job at this moment?
Oh, I think it's obvious, right? This is a team sport, running for president, and there's nothing I'd rather do than help my husband.
What made you fall in love with Chris?
I just thought he was funny and interesting. He had great stories. He still has great stories. And he was cute. He was cute. I mean, we have very similar moral values. We had the same values in terms of how we wanted to raise a family. When Chris was first elected, the family, we all gathered as he was being, we had won.
And most of all, I want to thank the most important people in my life. My wife, Mary Pat.
And Chris called all of us in, and we literally had a huddle. And he looked at all of us and said, no matter what happens these next 4 years, this group of people, we're the most important people to one another. And don't ever forget that. And as a family, you always can depend on us, and we will depend on one another. It certainly gives you a window into the kind of man he is.
Listen, you want to have the conversation later? I'm happy to have it, buddy. But until that time, sit down and shut up.
For the people who just see Christie and want to say he's a name caller, he's brash, he lacks self-control, how would you help them to see your husband as more presidential?
I think people see him as presidential. I don't think, the handful of name calling that has been caught on video sometimes. There was always a purpose to that. It's not like Chris doesn't do things with a purpose.
You got characters who are willing to do that kind of thing. Good, I'm thrilled for him. Stand up, yell and scream, do your thing. But here's the bottom line, is you gotta do work. You gotta do work. And every day, we're gonna continue to work together as hard as we can.
Is there something that you might be able to say through your lens? You see him and you know him like no one else.
Sure, I mean, I would encourage them to look at his record, and I think we saw that in many situations in New Jersey, whether it was pension and benefit reform, where he was able to persuade both sides to come to a consensus, whether it was his handling of Hurricane Sandy, the second worst storm in our nation's history.
When all of you look around and you see all this destruction, that's fine, but you know what? All that stuff can be replaced. You look to your right and to your left, to your husband or wife, your son or your daughter, right? Those are the things that can't be replaced.
And you were also a big part of that. I think it was 2 weeks after Hurricane Sandy, you'd raised about $16.5 million.
So what happened in Sandy, when it hit, it was less than 2 or 3 days later where Chris called me and said, you have to start a nonprofit, and hung up the phone. And we ultimately raised $40 million.
Incredible day for New Jersey. Mary Pat and I were here 7 months ago and saw the destruction on this boardwalk, and knew, though, that if we all worked hard, we worked together, that we would be able to get this done.
And do you watch the debates? And I'm sure,
Sure.
What's your reaction?
Yeah, I think he's great. Look, I think that he has a way of succinctly giving you an answer.
What we should do is to be investing in all types of energy, John. All types of energy. And I've laid out...
Meaning government?
No, John. John, do you want me to answer? You want to answer?
And again, he addresses the question. He doesn't hide from, giving an answer that is his answer. It's not like he makes it up. He really is a man of principle, and what you see is what you get.